We have about 10 countries that are top investment destination in Africa. And South Africa, the reason why we're here, we're in Soweto, we're in South Africa. I will be speaking about South Africa. Egypt is the top destination when it comes to investment in Africa, followed by Morocco, then South Africa. After South Africa, we have Botswana, there is Rwanda, there is Ghana, there is Mauritius, there is Rwanda, there is Tanzania, there's Kenya. So we have 10 countries that are attracting the most investment. But having said that, South Africa, Nigeria, Egypt, and Kenya, even though Nigeria is not in the top 10, they have about 95% of the FDI. So money coming in, you have South Africa, you have Nigeria, you've got Kenya, and Egypt. I am going to give the panelists an opportunity to introduce themselves. And of course, we'll go deeper into this conversation. And when we speak about political instability, it's so funny actually that Egypt, that was just maybe 10 years ago, was very unstable. So we know the Arab Spring that happened. We know that the president who was in power at the time was removed. And what I always say to people is that you must never think what happens over there cannot happen where you are. We saw what happened in South Africa in 2021 with the riots. That is also one of the things that can cause a nation to be unstable. Nobody, let me say this, want to invest in a nation that is not stable. How can we, with what we have now, promote that investment platform that is stable, but at the same time, 10 things around like Egypt? So how can a nation that came from instability, there was a president who was in power for a long time, he was removed. It was not just in Egypt, the whole of North Africa as well. So we'll basically be going into this conversation. As a person working in this space, I've been working in chambers of commerce for a long time. We do have a lot of information in terms of what makes a nation attractive to investors. But I will not only be speaking about people coming in, we also need to see how can that investment be driven from within. We're going to start with the panel. Basically, you just introduce yourself, the organization you are representing, and after that, I will be asking you a question. Why do you think investment is needed? According to you, when you look at South Africa, is South Africa politically stable or not? So there will be a series of questions that I'm going to be asking as we go through this conversation. So say, please start, and then we'll go with everyone.
Good afternoon once again. My name is Tulani Nzima. I'm the chairperson of the South African Villages and Township Tourism Association.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Tony Gumede, and I'm representing Brand South Africa, who is the state agency that is entrusted with managing South Africa's nation brand. And this is part of a two-pronged mandate, which is outside of the country, focusing on investment promotion and positioning the country as a competent destination for trade, for investment, for tourism, to share.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Tsidiso Mohlomi, and I am the Senior Director at the Tshwane University of Technology Institute for Future of Work. And I think the reason I got invited to be part of this panel is the work I did for about 5 years until last year from Gauteng Department of Economic Development around economic diplomacy and also investment attraction.
Thank you.
I represent African Diaspora Forum. I'm originally from Nigeria. I'm in the security space. Thank you.
Thank you, Prof.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Professor Honnafela Letlole. I'm the founder and the president of educational institutions. I founded the TVET College as a South African, and I've registered University of Technology and the college for grade R to grade 12. So that is what Mrs. Bauer wanted us to talk to you. God bless.
All right. Thank you so much for those amazing introductions. I'm going to start with you, Mr. Nzima, right here. When you look at South Africa as a nation, where the nation is now, where the nation is coming from, and particularly where the nation is going. So, as a chamber, one of the things we do is speaking to investors to basically come and invest in South Africa. They're actually investing not just in the image, they're investing in the credibility, they're investing in the stability, they're investing in the infrastructure, they're investing in the skills. Literally, investment is not just one point. There are so many aspects. So, when you look at South Africa as a nation, can you say that the nation is stable or not? If it is stable, why? If it's not, why? Politically.
I think when you talk about DFI, it's a very project, as you correctly pointed out. There are variables that impact on the decision to invest or not to invest. Money, as we know, or investments are very fickle. They grow feet very quickly if you do not respond to the opportunity. Where South Africa is at the moment, my answer will be to say is fairly stable. And the definition of stability, I think, is equally as complex as to what variables are you going to be looking at that will tick the box. But if I were to look at some of the things that will encourage investment or discourage investment, one would be the political stability. Let me not deliberate too much on that. The second one is the labor system in the country, whether it will be cost effective for them to operate in that country. That's the reason why you see a lot of companies migrating to softer countries with labor systems that are friendly to investors. But at the same time, there's also the issue of the financial policies in the country where it relates to the ability to repatriate your investment and your profits in those countries. There are a lot of companies that are investor friendly, but at the same time, they have these kind of laws that will not allow you to take your profits out of the country. So it becomes a futile exercise to do that. South Africa is stable because if you look at the political environment in other areas, it's much worse than what you see in South Africa. So we are not really looking at it as a negative side. The things that have been happening lately and influencing investment decisions also do relate to security. But security in its complexity, the security of investors, if you're talking about my brother who's coming from Nigeria, he wants to know that if he invests in Soweto, he will be able to freely walk in and out of Soweto to oversee the business. There are other things that have now become important. The issue of being a good corporate citizen. Are you just investing for profits and not plowing back in the country where you are? In South Africa, I think we have created that. There are other conditions, like, for instance, when you go into a country, I'll give you an example of China. Something that we're doing in South Africa, which mimics what China is doing, but we get criticized for it. Maybe it's the way we're packaging our messaging. All the countries have got regulations in terms of how do you get into the country, who do you partner with, what is the percentage of your partnership in that country. So if we can clean up those kind of things and package them in such a manner that the communication that we are sending out there, when you behave like China and say anybody who comes to China will be forced by legislation to have a 30% or whatever percentage to partner with the locals, then we are actually doing a fantastic job of it. So for me, I don't doubt the fact that South Africa is very stable. Our rand hedged against the rest of the trading currencies out there. It is a soft currency, but its level of fluctuation is pretty much stable as well.
All right, thank you so much. The question to Brand South Africa is there used to be this very powerful advert, actually, let's say South Africa, alive with possibilities. So as many, many years ago. And like I said earlier on, people invest in the image of the nation. How is South Africa doing image-wise? And I think as an institution, that is the mandate to promote the brand. Of course, that is linked to the attractiveness of the nation. On the scale between 1 to 10, where are we?
Indeed, you're right, Program Director. You would remember at the time, the positioning which was around Alive with Possibilities. At the inception or the formation of Brand South Africa at the time, we were, most of us would remember the terminology, the Rainbow Nation. We were a country that had shown resilience and overcome much of our history to be in a position to be able to present ourselves to the world, to trade. Thus, Alive with Possibility was about the potential. Now, I would liken it to, if there is a potential, it means there is a possibility, there is something that can happen. However, we have as a country evolved, we have grown, and this is illustrated by the diversity in our country, economically, socially, as well as politically. And I think some of the best unique features that we have exported, whether we look at, and this is across sectors, whether we look at innovation, whether we look at the art, we now surely can be confident that we have reasons to believe that we can illustrate to the world that now, but we are inspiring new ways. And we are not saying that as marketing jargon, but we have proof points to it. There are some doing amazing things. And here at home, there is also so that is being done at all levels and across sectors. Now, as part of our work, it's very important for us to understand and extract insights from the globe, and we do this through investor perceptions research, so to speak. We recently had a study that we commissioned by Bloom Consulting, which looks at how the nation brand is doing alongside other nation brands globally. And the outcome there is very, I would say to a large extent, favorable. 65%, although it's not 1 to 10 as you asked, was the overall picture of how well our nation brand is doing when put up against other nation brands in terms of competitiveness, attractiveness. And I think this speaks to the competence of our environment and the attractiveness that we have versus other nation brands across the globe. And now, this is of course difficult to summarize in just 1 or 2 sentences, because we are looking at the entirety of the nation brand, not only limited to the economics, but also the social environment, how well our people are doing in various, when we look at the, let me make an easy example, because we just did a send-off for Banyana for the World Cup. The sporting prowess in this country is, in most sporting codes, unmatched globally. And there are some areas in the world that get to know about South Africa and become more curious, interested to do business here in South Africa because they have interacted with something. It could be an exported product, it could be exported talent, music, all sorts of different competencies. So I think as a country, we need to be confident in ourselves and understand that we do have what it takes. The same way South Africa has what it takes, Soweto has what it takes. We've got talent that comes from Soweto, we've got innovations that come from Soweto. But I think most importantly, we first need to believe in ourselves, because it's perhaps an easier job actually to sell the country to the world, because we have proof points that we use to do that. Do South Africans believe in South Africa? I think that is the question we need to ask ourselves more than the world, because like I'm saying, the insights that we get as Brand South Africa illustrate to us that we have, we do have, there is belief in South Africa. There is investment. You know, sometimes you get these very misguided perceptions that say, oh no, nobody believes in South Africa, but maybe it's because we are our own worst critics. And it's because we do have realities of challenges as a country that we face. But our job as Brand South Africa is to say, pertaining to this challenge that that makes it difficult or is going to cause a disabler for investment, what is the country doing to address it? And so we don't sweep challenges under the carpet, but we speak directly to what are the initiatives that are being put in place to address that challenge. And that is our job as Brand South Africa, to reassure the investor and to market South Africa to the potential investor.
Thank you so much. But I think also just adding to what you said, that question of do South Africans believe in South Africa? Maybe we need to find ways of making sure actually that South Africans begin to believe in South Africa. Carol said earlier on, that every nation out there has got its own issues. For example, out of the UK, we saw how many prime ministers were kind of changed at the speed of light, but you don't see them all the time showing what's happening negatively to the rest of the world. The US, for example, there's a mess happening there, but you don't see the media or Americans, despite all the problems, when they get into a new space, they want you to believe that their nation is actually the greatest nation on earth, even though, of course, that is actually up for debate. But basically, just like the question you're asking earlier on, for TUT, I work in education, and I brought an organization from the US 2 years ago called Blacks in Technology South Africa. So it's a US-based foundation that aims to use technology to stomp the racial economic divide in the US. Our chapter is doing quite well, the Blacks in Technology South Africa. I've also been able to set up chapters in Botswana, in Rwanda, Tanzania, and Ethiopia because of the platforms I have. By 2035, Africa will have the biggest workforce in the world, literally bigger than China, bigger than India. When other countries are getting older, we are getting younger. And I spoke earlier on about investment. You don't just invest in one product, one project, one sector. You also invest in the skills, because jobs are linked to skills. Skills must be affordable. They have to be quality, basically able to respond to the challenges that we're facing as a continent. Are we investing enough in technology and innovation as a continent? Because we see what's happening now with AI tools like ChatGPT and all of that. Are we able to compete as a nation, South Africa, but also as a continent? Where are we in terms of the race to the bottom or the race to the top? I don't know whether AI will take us to the bottom or take us to the top. Where you are as a as an institution of higher learning, sitting with all of this potential that can maybe destroy humanity. I've been watching videos of robots being interviewed. I got scared. I mean, like seriously. We are talking about investment with South Africa. Investment needs to be linked to the challenges we're facing. As a nation, we know poverty, we know unemployment, we know inequality. What if this very same investment in technology will take jobs away from young South Africans? What are we doing in terms of investing in technology? Because the jobs of the future are basically tech kind of centric. Can you answer that question and tell us where we are as a nation? Should we be scared of AI, or we should just embrace it?
During lunch, actually, I said to somebody, there was a big hoo-ha around the 2K. Remember, they saying that we have to switch our computers off before the year 2000, or else we're gonna lose every information. And then I then made an example, say that every civilization will always have a hobbit. And basically meaning that those who are very scared of the civilization and innovation. But I will address your question.
Sure.
Then there are two things that the previous speakers have spoken about. Say again? Hey, okay. We spoke about the, what do you call it, the DFI, and we actually alluded a little bit on DDI, which is very critical. because sometimes we tend to overemphasize on the DFI because we think the money comes from abroad. South Africa actually, as an economy, we are standing at a position whereby DDI should actually serve as a stepping stone for our foreign direct investment. And unfortunately, due to reasons known to those that have money, they are basically sitting on the money that's supposed to be invested. It's something that we need to think about. Then you spoke about the issue around the work for the future. Tshwane University of Technology, as a predominantly black university, I would say that Sitweli Dombolo, if they were to put it like that, because as the university, we are the largest contact university in the continent. At any given year, we have a little bit over 60 to 70,000 students that are coming through TUT. And then we are speaking about 34% unemployment rate among the graduates, and which basically means that as an institute of higher learning, we are contributing to those statistics. And therefore, our strategy have to address the issue around the employment or employability, which within the framework of investment is very critical. Because for investment purposes, you need a competent workforce. And within the epoch of the fourth industrial revolution, we need to distinguish in terms of the effect of technology, because the northern sphere and the southern sphere, how the technology affect us is totally different. Somebody in talking about the fourth industrial revolution, they said it was actually meant to resolve the problem of the aging labor force of the West. Whereas for us in the global south, our problem is different. We have young and agile population, which basically mean, coming to your point, by 2035, we currently are sitting on the highest labor force and the young and agile labor force. And therefore, in trying to adopt the technology, the question that we ask ourselves is, how is that going to affect those? And the question that we also then need to answer is that in the epoch of technology, what is the strategy that we are having to make sure that we avert job losses? And the second aspect that we also need to be looking at, what is it that we are doing to train the labor force for the future? So as the university, we came up with a concept called the Institute for Future of Work, which basically saying that we are in the middle of the fourth industrial revolution. And in partnership with the industry, in partnership with the government, we need to be in the trends within the labor market. And we need to work with both the industry and the government to make sure that we avert the job losses through reskilling the current workforce. Then we are then saying with the future skills, we also need to be very proactive to make analysis to say, what are the skills that are needed? And this would then include that assessing the curriculum that we are having, to ask ourselves that, does the curriculum that we have actually prepare the students for the future? So Tshwane University, one of the pillars it has is future-ready graduates. We call them hustler graduates. These are the graduates that upon graduation, they can be able to work at any position and deliver. And then these are the kind of graduates that by the time they leave the university, they would have decided if they are made for employment or they are made for entrepreneurship. And so as the university, we are deliberate about that. We are not only doing that for our university, but we are doing that for the country.
Thank you so much. My brother, Prince, the question that I have for you, based on what you said earlier on, so you and I, we have a lot of things in common. You're from Nigeria, I'm from the DRC. I came to South Africa 22 years ago, and I'm a father to 3 amazing children. My first one is 18, and The mother is from the Eastern Cape, a town called Queenstown. And one of the things I've actually realized is that we are ambassadors of South Africa, whether we like it or not. The fact that you chose South Africa out of any nation on earth, I mean, really, you could have gone to the US or the UK, Australia, New Zealand. You're here. I'm also here. I've been here for 22 years. When you said earlier on, we're going nowhere, okay, sort of for me, but I'm going to the US now. But the question I have is really coming from the experience I had last year. I went to Zambia, I went to Zimbabwe. Our chamber is setting up women entrepreneurship centers. I wanted to hear what women entrepreneurs in Zambia, in Zimbabwe, and of course in Congo as well, are saying. So my host, I wanted to eat in the morning. She's like, we have to buy you bread from South Africa. I'm like, bread from South Africa? What's wrong with the other bread that is here? I always give this example of something called the South African advantage that a lot of entrepreneurs in South Africa don't know. If you've only been in South Africa your entire life as an entrepreneur, it's actually a problem. We have to make sure that South African entrepreneurs are exposed to markets, and I think Dr. Levy, who was here earlier on, was talking about getting young people from South Africa to travel to see what's happening out there. Because if Soweto is the only place you've seen, the way you see the world is really, really limited. So by design or by default, we become ambassadors of South Africa. So when somebody says to you, don't go to Soweto, they will kill you. When I got to South Africa in 2001, I lived in Port Elizabeth, and I would go to the township. I was actually being told, what are you going to do in KwaZakele? They'll kill you. I'm like, what's wrong with you? I would go to that place with my limited English at the time because you are here, you're an ambassador. I spoke earlier on about investing in perception. There is a lot of people from Nigeria who have bought houses in South Africa. I know this because I run a chamber of commerce. What is this perception, the image of South Africa? Is it getting better? Is it getting bleaker? And what can then be done? And you and I have worked with the the African Diaspora Forum since the beginning. As an ambassador of South Africa to the Nigerian community, that is a global community, what are you hearing? And how do we improve? How do we add value, right, to the conversation that aims to build, not the one that aims to kind of destroy? So what is happening in this conversation around Nigeria and South Africa? So, and then once you answer, in the next round, there's another question I'll be asking.
Oh, thank you so much, Mr. Moderator. I think I've introduced myself earlier on. First thing I was saying, Nigeria and South Africa on the continent, we are like the bag. We have the two handles. Once we can come together, we lift the continent. Once, you see, if you carry your handbag now, and you carry one side of the bag with a hand, one side will bend. But if you take the two together, you see you carry it firmly. What I would just say is, number one, from the area of business, first of all, what I've noticed about South Africa is to say, it seems South Africans fail to understand the idea of the IGR, that's internet generating revenue. I think we need to start. I will use we because I'm part and parcel of here.
Sure.
The IGR seems to be neglected. Carol was saying something about showcasing our own bags. That's we should start. Brand South Africa. I know you guys have branded things to showcase South Africa outside there. From Nigerian aspects, some of our people, they started putting the notes to say brain drain. because we left Nigeria to South Africa. Some left to US, Europe, Canada, and everywhere. I chose to be here. I've been practically traveling all over the world. But because maybe I'm fortunate to be born on the African Day, May 25. So I chose to remain in Africa. Not that I will not visit Europe in order to go and attract the Europeans to come to Africa. Beautiful place. The weather is there. We should be able to tap into those natural resources that God has given us. But we fail to understand that coming together as Africans, you see, the two countries, Nigeria, currently there's something going on that I would not want to discuss here openly. I just heard about it just yesterday, where some some stuffs is being played out from the diplomatic level, kind of like ego between the two nations. So it makes people like us, like Emerida pinpointed, the ambassador, to start looking at it. Are we going to continue fighting ourselves? You know the issue of the MTN, the multi-choice, the biggest place they make money is in my country. I remember when I founded Nigerian Lives Matter, it started when Nigerians were being targeted, being killed here. Gauteng province, Makura, he was dying to have this synergy with Lagos, Greater Lagos, and Gauteng to like work together. We have spaces where we can come together. We've proposed to say, let's take some guys from Soweto, from Shoshanguve, from Atrovich, from some El Dorado. Let's take them to the center of Eko. Eko is Lagos, center where things are happening, to just go and mingle. We welcome people, very warm people. In fact, once you mention you're a South African, they look at you, wow, Mandela. You guys are so wonderful people. You have this spirit already there, guiding. But some guys play around the ideology of to say, oh, foreigners are coming to your country. I know those people. We call them the third force. They don't want us to unite because immediately we unite, then we start taking those European countries to say, guys, queue behind us. They try to give us loan. What is the loan? Is it not the same money some of our politicians are taking to Europe? The country I come from, we just have a new president. He's doing fantastically well. He's trying to make sure, instead of importing, can you imagine a big nation like Nigeria with crude oil, gas, going to import refined petroleum from outside? Then Dangote step in to say, no, guys, we're going to build the refinery in Lagos now. It's the biggest. You understand? So we seem not to really appreciate ourselves as Africans. So what I believe we should be taking out from this place is to see how we can give you unity. You're talking about work. I'm talking about entrepreneurship. I want to make my own thing. I don't need to wait to go and work for one big what so you call it, coming from Europe or from America. Why can't I make my we call it puff puff in Nigeria. Here you call it amakunya. Guess what? That is the brand. We're talking about if I take puff puff early in the morning with cup of tea, do you know I'll be very okay for the next 6 hours because it gives me that energy to move on and I will save money instead of going there to go and contribute. I'm not saying you should not live good life, but remember one thing: as long we fail to understand ourselves, as long we fail to mirror ourselves to see that we are the brighter, in fact, we are the future of the world. Africa, I believe so much in Africa, and I believe if we can easily put it together, we get it right. Listen to me. 2 weeks ago, I think, let me say, we heard about something like maybe earthquake going around the line from maybe Pretoria, Midrand, going to Boksburg area, shaking. Then I was telling my partner, I said, guys, you know what? Something is fishing underground. Who are the miners digging the hole on the continent? Recently, I was told in Nigeria they will discover lithium. Oh, the solid one that can use to do batteries, because the future is going to be electrical cars. The youngster, don't let me mention his name, he's already looking into Nigeria. He wants to come and invest there. Then my government says, no, you will not be taking this thing out, manufacture them, and bring them back to us. No, do it here. We, as the youngsters, we say, you know what? Since politics is going to be the power, I started investing my money in politics. Though I went home, I contested, I lost. They told me, yo, you have to queue. You're coming from diaspora. So I look back. Am I going to continue fighting them back home? No. Let me follow another step here in South Africa. Maybe we join a political party or create another political party so that we speak to say, we Africans, we must work together. Don't allow these people to continue to dig our ground. And by the time they dig the ground, what are they trying to do? They want to sink us in the ground. Congo is there. What are we having there? Is it benefiting Congolese? No. They're taking it to Europe, Belgium, everything.
Okay, I'll come back to you again. Thank you so much. Let's
So
go.
thank you.
Thank you so much for that answer. Prof, the question I have for you, you are in the higher education space, and we are having a huge problem, I think, when it comes to youth unemployment, which is actually not just a problem affecting South Africa. Out of 10 million young people who graduate every single year across Africa, this was before the pandemic, only 3 million of those young people are going to be absorbed in the marketplace. The economy, we had actually a jobless economic growth, and I think the pandemic made it even worse. You have the perception of young people, I'm talking now from a South African perspective, where young people, instead of going to a TVET college, they want to go to a vet university. And you are into this space. You've just gotten into that space. One, how do you find the competition? There's TUT sitting there next to you, and you're coming into this space. We're talking about investment, investing in an environment that is not politically stable. But I think we don't always have to look at what is not working, because whatever you focus your attention on is actually what is going to be magnified. So, despite the problems and the challenges, I think South Africa, according to me, is still the best place here on this continent. You are getting into education. There's vets. There's a lot of these young people in other universities as well. How are you then able to convince these young people that it is actually better to go to a TVET college than to go to the traditional university because you are ready for the marketplace? You are engaging parents who are basically like me. I'm a father. I want to make sure that my kids can do something that will make them employable tomorrow. Are you able to manage the expectations of parents? Are you able to manage the expectations of the learners coming through, but also within the big framework of the nation from an investment in education? What's happening as far as the education sector, number one, is concerned, but specifically the TVET college, the space that you're occupying now?
Thank you. It's quite interesting. First of all, I'd like to say the reason why I got into the space is to ensure that I contribute to change the mindset of a young generation. Our kids are being taught to read the job mail rather than being employers and create jobs. Secondly, when I worked on a model to establish my TVET and other education institution, it took me about 5 years to research nationally and internationally this model that can empower a black child not to go and look for a job, but to be in a position to say, I am working out of this institution as a graduate to be an employer. My key models of my education model. So saying this, is to say to people, we normally doubt ourselves because we are afraid of the unknown. We are afraid to get into environment whereby it's challenged and there are people that are the bosses in their territory. As you say, we've got VETS, we've got UWC and other universities and other TVET colleges. As a South African township boy, a village man, I'm proud to say I established these institutions, knowing very well that they are my competitors. But I'm not there to compete with them. I'm there to complement and empower a black child from a township. In that, just to cut it short, I researched, when I was doing my doctorate, I researched about taking education to townships and villages and the impact of having these villages and townships having education institutions. Because the vision behind the whole thing for my research was to cut the umbilical cord that suggests that for you to get education, you must move from township or from village to the city. And I'm winning that because I'm a living testimony. That's what I'm saying.
Thank you so much. We are actually running out of time. There is one question that I want to ask all of you. And I think that question has culture as a component. So when we speak about Africa, we are a colorful continent, right? Beautiful, bold, colorful. But we've also realized that our culture has not always been utilized to promote Africa, right? As a continent. How do we, in the spaces we occupy, use culture to promote the image, right, of our continent? Nigeria has one of the biggest film industries in the world called Nollywood. South Africa is the second most, from an economic perspective, the second biggest economy in Africa. Netflix came. If you look at the numbers that came out, 71% of their budget in Africa was spent in South Africa. It's a lot of money. But at the same time, we don't find the appetite from government to invest in culture. I think for me, culture is one of the easiest commodities that can actually be used to promote a nation. So from a tourism perspective, say you've worked in that space for a long time, when people travel, especially internationally, some of them come to experience culture, right? The concept of cultural tourism plays a very important role there. What can we do collectively or individually? The institutions we have, we've got Brand South Africa here, we've got TUT, we've got African Diaspora Forum. We did the Africa Day Festival in 2010 in Yeovil. An amazing time. The World Cup was here. Our culture was showcased. What can we do this time around differently to make sure that our culture is taken seriously, not only by us here at home, but also internationally? What can we do collectively promoting our culture, supporting our culture, exposing our culture? The reason why I'm asking this question is because in September this year, our chamber is organizing an event in the US called the Season of African Cultures. We're going to be alongside the UN General Assembly promoting our music, film, fashion, and all of that. And there is going to be a country we honor every single year. So because the event is starting this year, we want to make sure that the first country we honor is South Africa in 2024, 30 years of freedom. I think there's something that needs to be done. I was very disappointed when I went to the Gauteng Film Commission in 2014. Basically, 20 years of freedom before 2014, and I said, what are you planning to do? Like promoting South Africa, 20 years of freedom and celebration. I was told we're just going to take the films made in Gauteng to this film festival in LA, like 5 films. I mean, I'm a filmmaker. I work in that space. I was really disappointed. What can we do with 2024 that is coming? Promoting South African culture, promoting Nigerian culture, promoting African culture in this global stage called the US. Say, You've been in that space. We'll
Yeah.
go like that.
Yeah, I think the first thing, which is at the apex of the question, is self-belief in our own. The, the Europeans have stripped us of that belief in culture. You all know that to dominate a nation, there are probably about three key tools that are used. One of them will be culture, the other one is religion, and then undermining your language. If you cannot articulate your point in your own language, you feel inadequate, and therefore you cannot make your point. But also, we have allowed Westerners to repackage things that are of value to us, like Ubuntu. There's nobody who owns that, who is the custodian of Ubuntu than us as Africans, but we have lost it. Then we look at, from a tourism point of view, one of the things that we should be exploiting, and it's very important, is the issue of authentic tourism. A lot of times when you look at tourists coming into the continent of Africa, they are coming here because they want to experience safari. That is something we're not going to discourage from doing, but we have to find an opportunity to hang other assets and experiences that we can offer. That is authentic tourism. And what does it mean when you talk of authentic tourism? It is that when tourists come in here, they want you to take them to Vilagazi Street. They want you to take them to places where you live so that they can experience that with you on a regular basis. And they are tired of just coming here for animals. And that is not very sustainable in a lot of ways. So these are some of the things that from a tourism point of view, we need to be able to package and sell. And it is sustainable. It is the one thing that will surpass the development of technology in terms of how we package ourselves, the competition using prices, those things can be measured. People don't come to your country from a tourism point of view because you have built some expensive hotels. No, they come here for certain experiences. And cultural tourism and heritage, which resides in the villages and townships, that's something that we need to start owning and be very proud of. We have a rich history as the whole of Africa. One of the things that when Brand South Africa was talking, I didn't want to jump in that space because I come from the tourism space as well, I'm sure you know it, is the fact that you can become aware of a country, but in a negative manner. And we, as Africa as a whole, we must also remember, from a Chinese or Canadian, the perceptions of us as a continent is like a country. They don't look at us as a continent. So the small things that we do that can promote ourselves, let's look at those proof points that we're talking about and repackage them in such a manner that if one of them is strong enough to attract tourists into the African continent, we can then start sharing because they've already made decisions to come to Africa. But the one thing that Africa has is its people, its culture, its heritage, all of these kind of things, including music and arts and all of those kind of things, without taking too much of your time. These things we can sell without any competition. Nobody can match the humility of Africans or Ubuntu of Africans. Nobody can match that. And it doesn't matter where you are in the rest of Africa. Those are the kind of things that we can sell all the time. And the heritage, cultural tourism, authentic tourism, and the responsible tourism, these may sound like buzzwords, but they actually mean a lot.
Thank you. Brand South Africa.
Perhaps to add to that, and I agree with everything that has been said as well. So it has been said many times that if you don't tell your story, someone will, and they'll give their own version. So as Brand South Africa, what we really work to do is to narrate our own stories. And I think we need to do that collectively. None of all of these nice aspirations can be achieved through the effort of just one entity. So to reiterate, collaboration is important because everybody has something to bring. If we are going to really export who we really are, we are going to tell our stories. I know, and this is not intended to promote MultiChoice and DSTV, but they spend a lot of money on enabling authentic storytelling from from the owners of the story. And I think it's important to the point about film. There's a lot of work. I think we've made many strides just in the past maybe 5 to 10 years. And there are film commissions across the country. I know in addition to Gauteng Film Commission, there's Joburg Film Commission. I know KwaZulu-Natal were there a few days ago. The KZN Film Commission is hosting a film festival where they are showcasing. We have short film that are making it to Cannes. I know of at least 2 or 3 filmmakers that are leaving in the next few days, going to New Orleans in the USA, because the short film that they have produced, I think it's called The Deal. It's on Netflix currently. It's being showcased there. I'm now just naming examples, but the point I'm trying to make, there is so much uptake of the storytelling by ourselves as South Africans, as Africans, because we have something to show to the world. I think there's also an aspect that is important, that we need to use the cross-pollination of culture to educate each other within the continent. And I think music does that very well. The cross-pollination of music from country to country in the continent really does a lot to spark up the positive and the social cohesion in the African continent. And I think we need not to undermine it, but to enhance that and be positive voices to that. So the talents that exist can help us export culture. They can help us create collaborations and affinity amongst each other. And so we are here as Brand South Africa to support that as well. But we need everybody supporting that kind of narrative where we are learning about each other, we are enabling each other, because ultimately the world is starting to recognize those stories. So let's take over our own stories and tell them ourselves.
Thank you so much.
In defining globalization, it's basically like living in the same village where we experience the life the same way. And this is basically talking around the issue of the digitization, even of culture. And one of you mentioned Netflix, and there are other platforms that we can talk about whereby we can actually entice people to be interested in coming through as tourists, and also in investing, in our townships and other stuff. One of the things that we are doing as TUT through the tech hub that we have set up is developing what we call a lab for digital content creation. And this is basically to then be saying to our storytellers that we can enable you to be able to tell your story. And so that is one thing. Then the second aspect, I think during COVID, there was an opportunity to try and give people entry into our life using the digital platforms. What do you call those guys? That was a prison. The Cornhill, the Constitutional Hill. They actually started having the virtual tour of the prison and the virtual tour of the precinct. I believe that from the perspective of technology, we need to start embracing it and be like Nigeria through Bollywood, be like India through Bollywood. Most of the time, it's those small people developing the content, being it consumed there, and exporting it. Thank you.
Well, I think everything is somehow said, but I would just say something. Have we tried something like exchange of culture within the continent, where Nigerian culture is being transported to Soweto, to South Africa? I would take it from the angle of the medicinal, where we have the traditional medicine. During the COVID-19, some of my brothers, we chose not to take the so-called foreign stuff, but we're busy taking agbo. Agbo is the herbs that we cook together. And you guess what? We drink a lot of those things every day that give us that strong stuff. Strong stuff in terms of we're strong healthy wise without taking the chalk, but we drink it fermented from the trees, the back of the tree, the leaves and everything. So I think when we look into that developmental side on the continent, we should start looking inwardly to those things that we look as in, they call it sometimes fetish. They say, no, these guys are fetish because you are taking herbal stuff, concussions. They call it fetish because they design it to be fetish for us. So I think we should start looking into that. And I will, Professor, I think you should give room for traditional medicine kind of in your university training. So I can assist you from there. We have, you see, the sangomas. We have it, the elewiomas in Nigeria, whereby they don't go to the hospital, but they still cure themselves with some of this local stuff. And it's only made in Africa, not in Europe. I think we should start putting our lives towards that, everything made in Africa. Thank you.
Thanks, Prof.
Yeah, thank you. From my side, let me say that with our institution, to implement what you asked, we have already signed about 15 MOUs with African countries and some universities overseas. The reason why I've signed the MOUs with them is for us to have what we call exchange programs, whereby we can take a person from Soweto and we send them to Ghana or to Ivory Coast or to UK for a certain period. And to reinforce the relationship and to reinforce or to work towards the change of the culture, we can also will be able to receive either a lecturer, a researcher, or students from the other area countries to come to, let's say, Soweto. So that will also help our youth, if we focus on the youth, to say this is how things are done outside your vicinity. And because of this that I've been preaching in the continent and overseas, that is why other institutions overseas and the countries themselves, they have signed our memorandum of understanding to say, we would like to exchange programs with you. We would like to come with new programs. As I said, the main focus is to change the perception that you can only, after graduating, you must go and look for a job. You need to take that fear of the unknown from our youth to say, go into this territory that you don't know, but you won't be swimming alone. We will be holding your hands as people in this industry to empower you.
That will connect Atlanta, Lagos, and Johannesburg. And for many people who don't know, Lagos as a city has had a sister city agreement with the city of Atlanta since 1974. It was the mayor of Atlanta at the time had a sister was married in Nigeria. So we want to make sure that these three powerful cities, Nigeria, Lagos, one of the most powerful cities, and of course Johannesburg as well, we cannot do the whole continent at once. We can start strategically with the two cities in Africa, Johannesburg and Lagos. And Atlanta, our plan really is to make sure that Atlanta becomes the global maker of Black culture. There is a lot that's happening in that city, and we truly believe with collaboration and partnerships with a lot of organizations, we can achieve so much more. I'm a filmmaker. I think I call myself a recovering artist. I left the art 7 years ago. I'm back now at a global level. So we need to increase the visibility of African talent because it is a very easy way to promote Africa. So you cannot appreciate Tusombedu without appreciating South Africa, where she's coming from. We cannot appreciate Trevor Noah without linking Trevor directly to South Africa as a nation. So I think we need to also empower cultural ambassadors. I was saying to Mbali, about speaking here, the conversation around investing in culture, that is something that I'm very passionate about. Because an artist from Soweto is a true embodiment of Soweto, can speak about Soweto. I spoke to the former mayor of the city of Joburg, Dr. Mpho Palatse. She went to France and she was introduced to artists from Johannesburg. And she said to me, I was so ashamed. Hey, you are the mayor of Johannesburg. We've got artists from your city here She didn't even know who these artists were. Imagine now if we can work collaboratively with institutions of higher learning, like TUT and Brand South Africa, and the tourism organizations that you're working with, to start now promoting African culture in terms of music, film, fashion, and organized festivals. So what we want to achieve as a chamber over the next 6 years is to make sure that our continent can contribute globally to the creative economy from below 2%, where we're sitting now, 1.4 billion people, we are not contributing enough to the global creative economy. That's literally what made me to decide to move to the US. I love South Africa. I became a father in this nation. I have this love relationship with South Africa. But at the same time, change is not happening fast enough. We have to make sure that we can work with people in the film and TV space. South Africa has got the talent. As I'm wrapping up this conversation, there will always be places where we can definitely collaborate. And I think with TUT, with Blacks in Technology, there's a huge number of HBCUs in Georgia, for example, Spelman and all these other Morehouse. We want to see how we can connect South Africa, the continent of Africa, actually, with the world. And Brand South Africa, I think we need to talk for 2024 and see how we can promote Brand South Africa. So thank you so much for your time and your contribution. I think this is the end of whether the event or the session. Where's Mbali? I think we're done for now. Okay, thank you.
I think we have. Panelists, they said I must take a picture with you.
Before you get to the pictures and the closing, I think the Prof and I joined this panel by default. It was not our intention to be here. There were some 2 points that the Prof and I wanted to make. I don't know, I think maybe protocol dictates that the Prof must speak first with a much more audible microphone than this one.
Okay.
I think if you give me the mobile.
The reason why we were hijacked and be part of this panel is that when our dear sister pronounced about the land that they have, I immediately said, I'll be honored if one of those can be allocated to us, to Honna Fela Letlole Education, so that we can establish higher institution of learning in Soweto. We are accredited. We even have international accreditation. And as a South African based, we would like to say Soweto, allow us to have a footprint. Madam, so that we can empower people and honor that vision that your parents have to work with the community. We are available from Honna Fela Letlole Academy. That's what I wanted to say.
Yeah, thank you very much, Prof. Mine is slightly different. I wanted to make the point that unfortunately tomorrow I will not be able to join the discussion. But I've made an observation about what happens at events of this nature. And that is the risk of us always trying to reinvent the wheel. We meet and talk and we go home all the time. And I thought there was an opportunity when the previous panel that was here was facilitated by you, Doc, to say, actually, we have entrepreneurs here who are interested in getting money invested in their businesses, whether for greenfields or is an expansion of what they currently have. But they have issues. The barrier for entry, the red tape, those are the things that are troubling them. At the same time, we have government sitting with us and also talking the talk. But the issue that we have is that government is not legislating enough and on the things that worry the entrepreneurs. Then we have the DFIs, at least those that are here, we have acknowledged the presence of the legacy financial institutions and saying they are not maybe a good fit for what we want to do. So with all of those things observed, and that was before Ms. Shabalala also presented the opportunity of the land that is strategically positioned in Soweto was talking. For my conclusion was therefore to say, let's avoid talk shops. In avoiding talk shops, we need to maybe, in one of the sessions that you're going to have the entrepreneurs, the people who have an interest to attract investment, tell you exactly what their challenges are. Let the financial institutions tell you what solutions they have at the moment that can assist in enabling these investors to enhance their businesses. But so that also the elephant in the room, legislation that needs to enable all of those kind of things. You heard them here. So that they are not actually legislating, they are not legislating in a kind of a broad way, but they are very specific about it. So that when we meet here in the third edition of the Soweto investment, we start off with a report card, Prof. Let's start off with a report card, because if we don't do that, my fear is we will meet again and it will sound like we have never met before and we'll start from scratch. It's a never ending record. Thank you very much. Yeah, that's food for thought for the organizers, and you'll think about it tomorrow.